The Hat Man, the shadow that feeds on your fear. Imagine waking up in the dead of night, your body frozen in place, and a dark figure standing at the foot of your bed. You try to move, but you can't. You try to scream, but no sound comes out. Your heart races as your eyes focus on the figure. He wears a wide-brimmed hat and an overcoat, his face obscured by shadows. You can't shake the feeling that he's watching you, feeding on your fear. This is the Hat Man, a shadowy entity that has terrified people around the world. The Hat Man isn't just another shadow person. Unlike other shadowy figures that flicker in the corner of your eye, the Hat Man has a more distinct appearance, standing taller, more defined, and far more menacing. Reports of the Hat Man often describe an overwhelming sense of malevolence that accompanies his presence. Some believe he is a manifestation of negative energy or a darker force that preys on the vulnerable moments between sleep and wakefulness. Others think he's a psychological phenomenon tied to sleep paralysis, but that doesn't make the experience any less terrifying. People who have encountered the Hat Man often speak of feeling paralyzed, both physically and mentally, as if their deepest fears are being harvested by this eerie figure. Some describe the sensation of being watched, while others claim they can sense him even before they see him, a looming darkness that creeps into their consciousness. His visits are brief, powerful, leaving a lasting impression that can haunt people long after the encounter is over. Whether you believe in the supernatural or see it as a trick of the mind, the Hat Man represents our deepest fears brought to life. Fear of the unknown, fear of losing control, and the fear of what lurks in the dark. But there are ways to regain control. Experts suggest improving your sleep environment, reducing stress, and practicing grounding techniques to lessen the likelihood of encountering this dark figure. If the Hat Man thrives on fear, then perhaps the key to keeping him at bay is finding your inner strength and confronting what scares you most. This shadowy visitor is a mystery that remains unsolved, a tale that continues to spread across the world. But one thing is clear, the Hat Man will always be a haunting reminder that sometimes our fears can take on a life of their own.
The Mystery of Shadow People. Part 2. The Visitor in the Mirror. There was a girl who loved standing in front of her mirror every night before going to bed to brush her hair. This daily habit helped her relax after a long day. The large mirror in her bedroom was where she would spend a few minutes each evening, looking at herself and reflecting on her life. One night, as she was brushing her hair, she suddenly felt that something was off. In the mirror, she noticed a faint, shadowy figure standing behind her, seemingly just a few steps away. Startled, she quickly turned around, but when she looked behind her, the room was empty. Thinking she was just tired and imagining things, she continued brushing her hair. But the next night, as she stood in front of the mirror again, the shadow appeared once more. This time, it was closer, almost standing right behind her. Terrified, she spun around, but this time, she felt a cold breeze brush against the back of her neck. The room was still empty, but she could sense that something was terribly wrong. Fear slowly began to take hold of her. But not wanting to believe in something so strange, she tried to ignore it and went on with her routine. On the third night, when the girl stood in front of the mirror again, the shadow was now right behind her, so close that she could feel its icy breath on her neck. Overcome with fear, she quickly turned around, but this time, the face reflected in the mirror was her own, a pale face with empty eyes and a terrifying grin. She screamed and smashed the mirror, fleeing from the room. From that night on, she never dared to stand in front of a mirror alone again, fearing that the shadow would reappear, and this time, it wouldn't stop at just watching her from the mirror. Even after moving to a new house and living in a different room, she always felt that someone was silently watching her, waiting for the right moment to return. The Mystery of Shadow People Part 3. The Unseen Watcher. A man moved into an old, decrepit apartment known for its creaky floors and unsettling atmosphere. From the very first night, he felt an eerie sensation, as if someone or something was watching him. It was a feeling he couldn't shake, but every time he turned around to check, the room was empty. He dismissed it as nerves, convincing himself that it was just the effect of living in a place with such a dark history. As the nights passed, the feeling grew stronger, more oppressive. It wasn't just a fleeting sensation anymore. It felt as though invisible eyes were constantly fixed on him, observing his every move. He began to avoid staying in one place for too long, hoping that moving around would shake off the unnerving presence. But no matter where he went in the apartment, feeling followed. One evening, as he sat alone in his dimly lit living room, he caught something in the reflection of his television screen. It was faint, almost imperceptible, a pair of eyes staring back at him from the darkest corner of the room. His heart pounded as he slowly turned his head to face the corner, only to find it empty. But the cold dread that washed over him told him otherwise. He knew he wasn't alone. Frightened, he turned off the TV and tried to convince himself that it was just a trick of the light, figment of his imagination. But the image of those eyes burned in his mind, and sleep eluded him that night. As dawn broke, he decided he couldn't stay in that apartment any longer. He packed his things and left that very day, never looking back. Even after moving out, the memory of those eyes haunted him. Couldn't shake the feeling that the unseen watcher was still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting to be seen again. The mystery of what truly resided in that apartment would remain unsolved, the chilling secret buried in the darkness.